morning on this rainy Friday afternoon. I'm definitely going to have some water here.
Wait, they rainy?
What is she talking about?
I don't know.
I'm talking about, literally I woke up.
Rainy Friday afternoon in the morning.
That. Already, literally, Pat, I woke up at 7:40. Not kidding you.
I wish I got to sleep in.
Don't tell me that's never happened to you.
I'm amazed.
That you accidentally slept in and you got so close that you barely made it. Don't tell me that's never happened to you in 40 years of radio. I know better.
Absolutely has never happened to me because my saying is if you're not 30 minutes early, you're late.
Well, according to my clock and the music, I'm not late. I'm right on time.
Yeah, she came in right on time. I was all prepared if you weren't here, though. I have new listings. I've got some coming soon. I've got market stats all over the place. I was all set. Look at me. I've got my little cozy little blanket on.
I know. I'm like sweating. He's over here dying. He's bundled up in a blanket.
I'm bundled up in a blanket.
Where does the rain part come from?
It's all gloomy out. It's not rainy there?
It's not supposed to rain for my weather forecast said it wasn't going to rain in the next 10 days.
It looks gloomy, like it's going to be rainy to me.
Well, gloomy.
That's pollen.
No, it's just gloomy because you're not used to the hour change.
No, that can't be it.
It's darker in the morning now, right, Pat?
That is true.
Yeah.
But not at this time. I mean, I leave the gym at 7:15 in the morning and it's dark, so I know that, but it should still be light. Plenty of light out right now.
It's cloudy. There's pollen. There's no rain, though, unfortunately.
Oh, man, I'm glad I'm not the meteorologist, that's for sure. So
I want to be a meteorologist. I want to have a green screen behind me where I can just point at random things and there happen to be city maps.
Isn't that funny? I've seen them do that. It's pretty cool.
And then occasionally I want to show a downtown traffic cam of some overburdened highway.
Pat does that verbally, right?
I know.
Every day, about 12, 15 times a day.
So we're going to talk about the market stats for the week, and then I'm going to tell you about something that I encountered yesterday, which is another little depiction on the market here. So very interesting information.
The shelves are bare on the market. There's nothing on the market.
Yeah, the inventory is sparse. That is for sure.
I have 2 coming soons.
Look how tight this is getting, Leo. 2747.
That can't be right.
Listings on the market.
That can't be right.
It is.
I don't understand. You're telling me that this week is 3 times as active as last week?
Oh yeah, something does look wrong.
Yeah, you're telling me that. Yeah, this is like.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to relook at this data here. I think we got something.
Why don't we just talk about the Tampa Bay Business Journal and their report that Tampa Bay home area prices are actually selling 1.2% below asking price?
What? There's no way.
Yep.
No way.
Yeah,
it's not. I'm telling you, I was in a room yesterday with a bunch of realtors, and literally, one of the things the mortgage guy says, he's like, how many of you guys have put in an offer at or below asking price? And we're talking, there was at least 50 people in that room. 2 people raised their hand.
I don't know.
At or below.
This one's saying that in the last 4 weeks, ending March 14th, the average price of homes have sold 1.2% below asking price.
You know what I think that is?
What is that?
So if that's true data, I know what it has to be.
Well, I have no reason to doubt the Tampa Bay Business Journal.
Well, I've got here. Let me tell you why. I'll tell you what I see. That's the only thing I know. I can relate that to what we see in the news, which are based by some sort of facts, right? But $699 was a contract price on a property that I have closing today. Mm-hmm. It was on the market for a little bit. We're closing at $637.
Okay, that's below ask.
Yeah, but that's the point. Like, the only thing being sold is what's left. And I think people are finally realizing if I want to sell, I have to really take the market value, where some of them have like these pie in the sky numbers. You know?
They do. And I guess if they're gumming down, those are going to bring down the average. So I guess we need to see the median.
And I'll give you, well, here's
here's
another thing too. I've got another one. Remember that one that was out by Maiden Seed that we did the open house in? That one was listed at $675. It's not closing yet, so I can't say what it was, but I can tell you that appraisal came in quite a bit lower than our contract price. It's still closing at the contract price. So if people are following the appraisals and their financing is mandatory, or the realtors are kind of go with the flow, that one may have closed under.
Okay, well,
mine did not.
We're still better than the national average. They're saying nationwide, homes have sold 1.8% below asking price. And this is just the last 4 weeks. So I actually do start to see this.
I wonder when that report is. So how are you seeing
14th.
that in your business? Like, how is that showing up?
It's not. I mean, we're still doing a fraction of the inspections out there. If there's 1,500 homes going pending, we might be doing 10 to 12 home inspections. I mean, the market's fragmented, and we're just doing not even a noticeable amount of the market share for home inspections. But you have to think
There's not much to get.
well, there's not a lot of staff. I don't have the staff to handle like 50, 60 inspections, and even then, that would just be 5% of the market share.
So what's your staff like now? How many inspectors? How much staff?
We've got eight inspectors. We're up to like 20 people in staff if you consider design and inspection together. So yeah, we're actually doing pretty good. But yeah, again, we're a piddle of the actual market share for the amount of potential home inspections that are out there, and a lot of it's just driven by the number of staff you have.
Yeah, that would make sense to me. So I'm going to try to pull up these market stats while we're talking. What else do we have on there?
Well, the other thing I found interesting, and this is the same thing that happened last year, is if we take a look between February of 2020 and February of 2021, Tampa Bay home values have grown 12.5%.
Now, that I agree. And that's saying what, year over year?
That's year over year for February. So that's still higher than the national average. That's still pretty high. I mean, if you're looking like 8%, 8% is a good return on investment. This is 12.5. So real estate, sorry, financial planners out there, real estate still is the best.
It's your home run.
It's your best version for financial planning as part of a balanced portfolio is to have a house in there.
Or two, or three.
Well, of course. But, yeah, I mean, sorry, financial planners, you can't make fees on this.
Well, I mean, it's even my financial advisors will flat out say, because I don't have as much in the market as I do in real estate. And they'll say, real estate's your home run. That's what they say. And I'm like, yeah, I guess it is.
It's solid. It's mailbox money. I mean, you got to think of it. If you take a house and make it a stock, you're going up. You're going up 12.5% a year, and you're making monthly what they call dividends, and that's where a stock actually pays you for the privilege of holding it. So you're making monthly dividends, and you're making 12.5% a year in what I'll call imaginary money, because you don't actually capture it till you sell. But yeah, that's just exciting news if you're a homeowner, and if you can buy a second home and make some mailbox money, then that's the way to go. The problem is your inventory right now is not the best when it comes to quality.
Yeah, one of the things I was telling my agent in the office earlier was I really would love to measure.
You weren't even here earlier.
No, like earlier in the week.
Okay.
I would love to measure how much new construction is actually going up.
There's a lot of new construction. I mean, I'm sure when we have Mike Fasano on the air at 9 o'clock, he'll talk all about the new construction in Pasco County.
Yeah, what I'm curious to know is what the percentage is that these are going up month over month, because we're seeing it regular in terms of the percentage of increases. And what I can tell you is we know there's an increase because there's an increase in building supplies, right? I mean, timber has almost tripled since the start of COVID. And everything has gone up. Roofing materials, everything has gone up.
Well, some of it's gone up because of a shortage of supply, and it had nothing to do with the demand.
Yeah, but are the prices going to come back down? And I don't think they are.
Well, they never do. There's always the guise of pass this bill and we'll lower prices, and it never happens. Just they pass this bill and everyone's gotten used to the price increase. It's kind of like the opposite of what they teach you in macroeconomics. And in macroeconomics, they teach you that if there's a charge increase to the main company, they're going to pass some of it on to the consumer and pocket the rest, as being hurt financially. That doesn't seem to be the case. They're passing everything along, and then when these things lax, they still have passed everything along, and now they're just making more profits.
Yeah. So I think those numbers that we were starting to look at earlier, Leo, those were...
Monthly?
No, those were a whole MLS, which includes most of the state of Florida.
That makes sense.
Crazy number still when you think about that.
Well, actually, if that's the whole state of Florida, that's very interesting.
Still crazy low, yeah. Most of it. Now, Hernando has their own MLS. Miami has their own MLS.
Okay, I was going to say if that's
There's a couple of places that have their own MLS, but that is most of the state of Florida.
then we're the largest percentage of it.
Absolutely, yes. So when we come back, I'll share what the actual market stats are for Hillsborough, Pasco, and Pinellas single-family homes.
I'm still impressed that we're like 25% of the whole market. We'll be right back after this. Don't go anywhere. Welcome home, Tampa Home Talk. We're here, carrying on the Adam Talley tradition of saying welcome home.
Now this is very bleak, Leo.
Yeah, it's still bad. I still want to say these numbers are garbage, and we need to get proper numbers.
No, I verified it. I just pulled the numbers myself.
Okay, so we actually have less of everything this week.
Single-family homes in Pasco, Pinellas, and Hillsborough. We're at 600 homes. The number of sold, 856, which is weird. That number's way off, but I did pull it. Wait a minute. Oh, you know what?
I think our numbers are still off.
They are off, and I know exactly what I did, and I'm going to fix it.
I'm going to distract the listeners while you're fixing things with talking about a listing.
Yes, these are wrong. So our market, you can set on our custom, on our MLS, the main page. I've set it exactly where I wanted it, and unfortunately, it has reset for some reason or another, and it is not correct.
Oh my.
So
we need to distract our listeners. Sarah, I want to speak to Sarah Cricky. Is she on the phone?
You got her.
Good morning. You're here to distract our listeners from our inability to pull market stats.
No, everything's all rearranged this morning. That's how it goes, when the host wakes up at 20 till, everything's
How have you been, Sarah? It's been a while.
It's been crazy. It's been a roller coaster. How have you? How have you been?
I've got no complaints. That in itself is a complaint, but other than that, I have no complaints. How are rates looking right now?
So rates have moved, obviously. Everybody's kind of in sticker shock over interest rates. I would say on average across the board, probably 0.5%. They're still really low. Again, a couple of years ago, 4.25% was a great rate. Rates are still in the low threes. In some cases, the high twos. But they have inched up about 0.5%.
So what caused that? I mean, usually you keep your rates down to spark economic growth, and I figured right now with everything that's happened in the 1 year that's gone by that we want as much economic growth sparking as possible.
Well, the Fed rate is what really inspires economic growth as far as retail purchase and things like that. Mortgage rates don't follow the Fed rate, and so there have just been a number of things that have changed. Obviously, we have a new president. We have just all kinds of things going on behind the scenes. Fannie Mae has made some changes with respect to how it's going to service second homes, investment properties. All of those things have had an impact. Supply and demand with respect to inventory as far as real estate is concerned, that type of stuff.
What are some of the highlights of the Fannie Mae changes?
Well, I mean, the Feds haven't made they've made no changes to the rates, right? I mean,
correct.
The Fed fund rate is almost zero. You said it doesn't affect it, but it does. It's not everything because it still follows the stock market, but ultimately the Fed funds rate does determine which direction rates are going to go.
So if the Fed hasn't changed the rates, the mortgage companies are raising theirs, they just want more profit then.
It's not just the mortgage companies, though, because it moves in line with the stock market.
Oh.
It follows bonds.
So an example of that would be, Fannie Mae has made an announcement beginning in April that they will only purchase and service 7% of second home and investment transactions. So that's a big deal for lenders if, they refer to that as selling to agency. And if they can only sell 7% to agency, that's going to change the criteria for which they approve a loan, interest rates, loan to value, qualifying criteria, that type of stuff.
Is that a move to get more people to be homeowners that live in their home versus investors?
I think it's a risk-based thing. Don't you think, Sarah, that they don't want to have too many eggs in that basket?
100% correct. Yes. And so, I've not in 23 years seen that. Obviously, I've seen a market go up and down like a roller coaster. I've seen, we've gone through more than one meltdown. I've not seen anything like that. And so we're kind of feeling our way through that right now with respect to how that could potentially move interest rates and or qualifying criteria.
I would think if you'd have the less loans out there to potentially write, that's got to move something in some direction. Well, it means
that they can't sell them on the secondary market. They now have to service them.
Yeah.
So whether they want to keep them or not, and then banks have their own, allocations of risk that they have to follow as well. And a lot of that changed after the housing crash as well. I know that all too well because I was a lender at the time. And prime example, one of the banks that we would do a lot of construction perm loans through, they basically had too much money out to too many builders, and they went belly up because of that. Right. So banks really want to diversify their risk, and they won't lend too much to one person or one type of loan or anything like that.
Well, a lot of investment properties that are under, let's say, $500,000, a lot of those are cash purchases, so they don't even.
So it doesn't matter. Yeah. But for what Sarah's looking at, it does.
Well, yeah, she's a lender.
Yeah.
So yeah, cash buyers are not very attractive to lenders.
This is brand new. It's effective April 1st, so we're all kind of feeling our way through that to see what kind of an impact it's going to have and how we can stabilize as a result. Obviously, we do service loans ourselves. Not every lender does.
So Sarah, what was it again? Second home, and what was the other criteria?
Second home and investment only. Yeah, owner occupied. Haven't really seen a change there. So, imagine every single lender in the entire country sells second home and investment purchase. And it's a big deal here in Florida as well.
Back to what I said before, make it your 2-year millionaire plan, like I said in the book, and move every 2 years. Leave a trail of investment property behind you.
Leave a trail of investment property.
You can buy it as your primary, live in it, and move in 2 years.
Yeah, and then you qualify as a first-time home buyer.
Not first-time home buyer, only the first time, but you qualify as an owner-occupant every time you move.
I thought there was one of these criteria that you're a first-time home buyer if it's once every 2 years.
If you haven't owned in 3 years.
3 years?
Yeah, if you haven't owned in 3 years. But if you already own a home and you're leaving it behind as a rental property, you're not a first-time home buyer.
That is true. That is true.
But this is how you can build a nice little portfolio of rental properties behind you and still get the best pricing with the lender and not create fraud. Live in it every 2 years and move.
That seems like a lot of work. I'm in my forever home. I'm never leaving.
Leo, if I had it to do all over again with a spouse that was a little more willing, that's the key, right, for both of us, I would move. I would have moved every 2 years. And my first home would have been a multifamily home. And I would have left a trail of rental property behind.
Yeah, I mean, that is the way to go. If you can get into a duplex or a quadplex and live in part of it and rent the rest of it.
That was my first home. That would have been my very first home purchase.
If you do something like that, would you recommend a property manager? I would.
If you don't do this for a living, yes.
Well, even if you do it for the living, I wouldn't want to live in the building and have the tenants know that I live in the building and
I would
I'm
have
the owner.
someone else collect the rent.
Yeah, a property manager.
Well, you could just have a friend collect it and tell them they're the property manager, or, But I probably, if you lived in the building.
Yeah, you don't want them to know you own the building if you live in the building.
Well, they would be knocking on the door at
my toilet won't flush. Yeah.
And I can tell you there's some people that won't even live. They wouldn't even move in. They wouldn't even rent the place if they knew the owner lived in one of the units. Because I've had people that literally were renting a house that they own next door. And because the owner lived next door, they're like, no, I'm not interested in renting.
Why is that?
I don't know. Lifestyle preference. Maybe they figure the landlord will be too much in their business. I don't know.
Yeah, it's good points.
But I can tell you if you were in like a quad, for example, and I can guarantee you would have at least a tenant or two that would say, "Oh, the owner lives in the building." No, not interested. But I had a guy, an older gentleman that him, Sarah. Actually, you did a loan for him. He bought a property, an investment property, and he wanted to self-manage it. But he said, "Don't tell the tenants I'm the owner. Tell them I'm the maintenance guy." So I did. So he was the owner going over picking up the rent. So the maintenance guy's going to come once a month and change the air filters and pick up your rent check. Okay. They're like, okay.
I think I would rather them know me as the owner than the maintenance person. The maintenance person's the guy you have no mercy on.
Well, this guy, he was a trip. Like really, we enjoyed him to pieces. We love him to death, and he was an older black gentleman, and he just has a certain way of thinking that people in his generation live through, right? So they think that way for a reason, and he's like, yeah. I'm a black man. They'll never suspect that I'm the owner. They'll totally think I'm the maintenance guy. What I could do other than laugh, But this guy was such a hoot. We love him to pieces. He calls me his daughter. He said, if you were a black girl, no one would know otherwise that you were not my daughter. But I'm calling you my daughter. I said, okay.
So I want to explore this whole 2-year thing. So what about reducing debt? If you're going to have mortgages all over the place, aren't you just going to have debt all over the place?
Yes, but you have tenant that is offsetting the cost of that debt.
Interesting.
Right? Like your tenant's paying your liability.
Lease on your
lease
on your departing property that you're going to be renting out, and provided that you've already selected a tenant up front who's given a security deposit, you'll be able to negate that mortgage payment with 75% of whatever you rent it for. If you rent it for $1,000, you can offset your mortgage payment by $750.
Yeah.
If you have an annual tenant.
So let's say your payment's $900. You rent it for $1,000. Lender's going to give you credit for $750. So now you just have to, that difference, that $150 is what they're going to count against you.
Okay.
If you rent it for more, it's income.
We'll talk about it after the break.
We'll be back in a minute. Well, good morning and welcome home. This is Tampa Home Talk. So glad you're here. So glad you're back with us. Couple things. So to pick up where we left off, Leo. So the rent, the way it calculates, if you did the 2-year millionaire plan, right?
Right.
I talk about in my book, Selling Through Relationships, Why Cold Calling Sucks and Relationships Win, is available on Amazon.
And if you have a professional project management certificate, it does count as a CEU. 8 of them, to be exact, if you read the book.
That's pretty awesome. So 8 CEUs if you have a project management certificate.
Yep.
I love it.
From the PMI. You just have to log the book. They've approved it to be a CEU because you can do self-reading about project management, and the book tells basically about the project management of you.
We are going to do a little bit, we are going to do a course questionnaire type thing for the book, because the people that come on with us, it's a required read. Because I think it tells a lot about our culture, a lot about me, a lot about, in general, how our business operates. So for us, it's an important read of any new hire.
You should make a Skillshare presentation for it, too.
Yeah, we are. At some point, I'll do, I'm sure, speaking engagements or something on it.
Yes.
So going back to where we were on this, the lender gives you 75% credit of whatever it is that you're buying. So if you're following the 2-year millionaire plan.
Yeah. Explain this 2-year millionaire plan.
Okay, so it's where you buy your home.
I want to chime in on that, on the rent, too. That's in the first year. Changes after that.
Okay, perfect. So let's go back to the numbers real quick, and then Sarah will jump back in. So if you buy your home and you live in it, and you are now going to rent that home out and buy your next home.
Yes.
The lender's going to give you 75% of whatever the face value is of the rent on your lease.
Explain that sentence.
So if you're renting a property for $1,000 a month, not that exists, haha, but it's even numbers. If you rent it for $1,000 a month, they're going to give you credit for $750. So if you're renting it for $750, it's going to be a break even. If you're renting it for $800, it's like having $50 extra in income, and if it's $700, it's a $50 debt. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so Sarah's saying, so you can do that the first time. So what happens the next time? Let's say you live in house number 2, you've got a rental property behind you, and it's 2 years later again, and you want to buy your next property and rent that second one out.
So the reason that the lender does a 75% calculation in year 1 is because they have nothing to base it on, but they know as the homeowner, as the landlord, you're going to have to maintain the property. So they hold 25% back on the calculation, assuming you're going to have some maintenance expense.
That makes sense.
Just a standard calculation. Now, you've owned the home, fast forward 1 year, you've collected rent for 1 year. Now you're claiming that rent on your tax returns, because at that point you're not going to get credit for the rent unless you're filing it on your IRS tax returns. You can't be putting rent cash in your pocket and saying, oh, I collect $1,000 a month, or you're not going to get credit for it. So fast forward a year, you're filing your tax return, you're claiming your rental on what's called a Schedule E, and you're putting the fair market days, your tax preparer yourself, you're putting the fair market days that you were able to rent the property. You know, maybe we had a storm, or maybe you did some rehab work to the property and it wasn't rentable for 365 days. So you're going to put the number of days it was able to be rented, and then you're going to start expensing. So what real estate taxes did you pay that year? How much was the homeowner's insurance? Did you pay property management fees? Or did you make repairs to the property? So at that point, it's a completely different calculation in terms of how the rent is computed, your net rent after your expenses. So lenders can put back into the number, meaning give you credit for, your rent, add back in the real estate taxes you paid. You're not penalized for that. The insurance cost. If your tax preparer is depreciating the property, that's not a tangible type of money.
Expense. It's not a tangible expense.
Correct. It's not physically cash out of your pocket, so that goes back into your number. The things that don't are maintenance. If you're making repairs to the property management fees, those types of things are going to reduce the amount of rent you're given credit for. So you buy a rehab and you fix it up and you put $20,000 into it in year one and you expense that on the taxes, you're probably going to be taking rental losses in that year. So it can vary from one year to the next. If you buy a turnkey move-in ready investment property and you rent it all year and your tenant pays on time and you're writing off your mortgage interest and your insurance and your real estate taxes, maybe a little depreciation, and that's it, then you're going to get the most bang for your buck in terms of how a lender computes your rental income.
There's actually very big calculations that property managers use, and as a real estate broker, not a sales associate, but an actual broker, you have to take in-depth exams. There's a lot of math on it that go around property management, and they teach you to calculate all of these formulas. So your potential gross income minus vacancy and collection losses, minus taxes,
Correct.
minus insurance, all this stuff. And then and this is how you also calculate the cap rate. And the cap rate tells us what that return on investment is.
And what's a good cap rate?
Well, good cap rate is 10%, but in
Okay.
this market, you're not going to find a good cap rate.
What is
You're not. I mean, the cap rates, we're not seeing 10% cap rates.
what's a decent cap rate? Would I not want to be below cap rate?
Well, I mean, it's all relative, right? I think. So when we look at the cap rates, a lot of times we're going to see stuff right now somewhere between 4 and 6%.
So 10
Because
is
you
good,
factor-
but 4 is acceptable.
Well, when you factor in how much you can buy the property for and how much you can rent it for and all that stuff, right now, if we're calculating cap rate and you're buying a property, you're going to be between 4 and 6%. That's what we're seeing most properties come in.
Is the 1% rule still in effect?
Yeah, I think it's a good way for people to do simple math and kind of measure if it's a good rental property.
What is
right?
the 1% rule?
So the 1% rule is, for example, if you're buying a property for $100,000, you want to be able to rent that property for at least $1,000. So 1% of whatever the purchase price, get that amount in rent.
So if I'm buying the
1%
standard
rule.
3.2 around here for $260,000, I got to rent it for $2,600 a month?
Yeah, and the going rents are really close to that. So what I'm saying about it being all relatively, to bring this conversation full circle, is just because, the cap rates are lower right now, 4 to 6%. Long term, you're going to see that, A, because of the interest rates, right? So your mortgage payment's going to lock in at the lower rates. B, with inflation, housing costs are going to continue to rise, rent prices are going to continue to rise, and rates are going to continue to rise. So the cap rate in the past of 10% was always based on a higher interest rate at the time. So right now, interest rates are low. I mean, how much money are you going to get on a CD, right? If you stick 10 grand in the bank and you do a CD, your return is going to be so minimal.
I haven't seen a CD in about 8 years.
Exactly. It's almost not worth locking up your cash, in my opinion. So the point is that 4 to 6% annual return looks pretty good when the alternate comparison is a CD or savings rate. You're not going to get, it's a fraction of 1% is what they're paying right now.
That's true.
So long term, that cap rate will rise because your expenses are going to stay about the same and the rent prices are going to increase, if that makes sense.
Well, no, tax rates can go way up. I mean, if property values are increasing 12.5% a year, and you're
But there's a cap on it of 10% per year.
okay.
And they usually don't jack up the assessed value too much. So they could, but usually you're not going to see wild swings in assessed value from one year to the next with the same owner.
We'll have to ask the tax collector
We'll definitely
about
ask
all
him.
of this.
Yeah. Well, he's going to tell you the property appraiser is the one that actually puts the assessed value on there, not him.
Yeah,
but we'll ask his opinion on it because he'll be in next hour.
I'm sure. Yeah, and he loves to give his opinion on things, so I'm excited to hear this.
He is not afraid to talk and
I'm
say
very
anything
excited
at
to
all.
hear his opinion on that.
So going back to what Sarah's saying, basically watch your expenses if you're going to follow this 2-year millionaire plan. Talk about this with your accountant or your CPA so that they know you don't really want to expense too much if you're planning to not carry that loss into your next property purchase because it can affect you. It can affect you, right, Sarah?
It can. I mean, everyone's different. If, for some folks, they have enough room in their debt ratio to purchase an investment property, but not to carry the payment. So they will look for an investment property that's already tenant occupied so that they can pull that annual lease into their portfolio, keep that tenant on, and that helps them purchase. Other people
let's talk. Can we talk about this for a minute, Sarah? Because that's a really good point that you bring up that you didn't actually bring up. But if you're buying a property as an investment property, which wasn't exactly what we're talking about, but if you're buying a property as an investment property and the property is already rented, meaning they have a lease, they have a track record, they have everything they can prove, talk about how those calculations factor into the purchase.
So that tenant can't be at the end of an annual lease. That tenant, you're purchasing the property. The tenant doesn't want to move. They're willing to sign a brand new annual lease with you as the new owner. You're going to get that first year 75% calculation. And so if you have a tight debt ratio but want to purchase investment, that might help you.
Let's say that the tenant just signed the lease last month and you want to buy it next month. So you've got easily a remaining 10 months left on the lease.
It's got to be 12. So at that point, the current owner is no longer going to be the owner. So you're going to make those accommodations. The existing security deposit will be transferred to you as the new owner. You're probably going to modify that lease and add the time needed to make it an annual lease with the new owner. So
let's say they just signed and you got 12 months. There are appraisal calculations and things that I know lenders do if it's rented, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when does the rent comparison schedule come into play on the appraisal?
So the comparative, the market analysis with respect to operating income and rent schedule, all that's saying is, the rent that you're collecting is indicative of the area. So for example, an applicant can't come along and say, hey, I'm going to buy this property and it's leased for $2,000 a month. And I'm going to get credit for 75% of that without actually proving that the market rent supports it. That would negate fraud, in other words. So if reasonable market rent in that area is $1,000 and you produce a lease and a security deposit for $2,000 a month, it's going to have to make sense. And that's the reason rent schedules and market analysis is performed by the appraiser.
Yeah, that's what I'm sorry. I kind of was wanting to bring that up, but I said it a little wrong. So thanks for correcting me.
Yeah, no, it's just a means to support what you're saying. I mean, imagine, you're producing a lease and a security deposit, and that's it in terms of qualifying. So the appraiser's going behind that saying, yep, this market rent makes sense for this area. And it's not inflated or anything that would be a red flag for fraud.
So when we come back, Sarah, we'll have limited time because we're going to have Adam Talley do his insurance tip of the week. But right after that, let's talk about our first-time low home buyers and let's talk about some strategies that they can utilize to actually get their offer accepted. Because it is tough right now for these guys. I tell you, to be a first-time home buyer in this market, some of them are getting beat up. So I have some amazing ideas that you probably didn't hear from your realtor that will help you get your offer accepted. But they got to know what they're doing. So we'll talk about this. Our off-air number is 813-377-2775 if you want some help getting your offer accepted. You've not been able to do it. 813-377-2775. We'll be right back.
Welcome home, Tampa Home Talk. We're back. Final segment before the 9 o'clock hour. We got to fit 2 callers in.
We can do it.
We can do this.
So we're going to flip-flop. We'll have Adam at the tail end of the hour and Sarah to run through the first-time home buyer, how to get your offer accepted. So Sarah, let's talk about this. And I got some ideas. I'll chime in as well, but I'm going to give you most of this 5 minutes to talk about how we can get the buyer's offer accepted.
So most of our first-time home buyers love the government programs, the USDAs, the FHAs, the VA products. They're the most favorable with respect to interest rate, low down or no down payment. And right now, those are very challenging products to get accepted with a seller in the current market. They don't want to deal with the nuances of additional requirements for appraisals and things of that nature. So our first-time home buyers are now preparing to go conventional. It's the best way to compete in the market right now. There are some aggressive conventional programs that will allow 3% down.
Sarah, let me chime in on that too. I know sometimes people picked the FHA and the VA because the rates are a little bit better, but with the FHA, the MIP is permanent now for the life of the loan. So if I were to be a first-time home buyer right now, I would definitely pick conventional anyway for that factor, because when they go to try to get that off in the future, chances are rates are not going to be that low, and now they're going to be stuck with PMI for good.
And that's the case. And that's the case a lot of the time. The other side of the coin is the conventional is going to have a lower debt ratio, allowable debt ratio, and depending on the credit score, private mortgage insurance is privately underwritten. So depending on your credit score, you could be spending more for mortgage insurance initially. And so you kind of have to look at the pros and cons. But it's really neither here nor there right now. We're not seeing a lot of government buyers. Everyone's trying to pre-qualify to go conventional so that they can be as aggressive as possible. From the lender's perspective, we want to collect your documents up front. We want to get your loan approved and underwritten up front before you find the home. You know, many times we talk to a client and we request everything so that we can get behind it for the customer, and we don't hear anything for 3 weeks. They find the right house. They know it's going to be gone soon. They call for a pre-approval letter, and they say, oh, I forgot to send you my stuff. I promise I'll get it to you right away. You really have to be proactive at making sure that you've got that locked down so that you can make aggressive offers with quick closing.
Yeah, and here's the thing too that we're seeing. I mean, we're getting multiple offers on every property. So at this point, let's say you've got 20 offers or more, which is not uncommon. And what we're seeing right now, literally anything FHA or VA is kind of getting pushed to the wayside, and we're only looking at cash and conventional. I'll tell you, as a listing agent, that's usually how it's going. So the way to get your offer accepted is to do exactly what Sarah said with respect to submit all of your documents in advance. Let them get the file ran through automated underwriting. Let an underwriter actually look at it. And then when you go to make your offer, let's say you're strong financially, right? You've got low debt ratios. You more than qualify for the house. You've got your down payment in place. Your credit's great. You've been an employee at your company for a long time. The best way, in my opinion, to get that offer accepted right now in this market is to mark the cash box. And so there's a lot of misconception with newer agents that say, oh, you can't do that, but you actually can. If that box is marked, you are now just not making an offer contingent upon financing. So again, if you've been through underwriting, you're super strong. You know you can get a loan no matter what. You can make a cash offer without contingent financing and basically just get an appraisal contingency.
I did not know that. I thought cash meant cash.
Satisfactory title and appraisal. Correct.
Well, title is built into the contract in a different provision. So the only thing that changes whether it's cash or financed. And so if it's cash or does not have a finance contingency, that's going to be a much better, much stronger offer for the seller. The only thing they're probably not going to like is the appraisal contingency. So in this market, you have to consider, what do the comps look like, and would you be willing to pay the difference if it appraised short? And what percentage would you say you're seeing, Sarah, of these buyers that are paying the difference when it comes in short?
I'm seeing a lot of it. I'm seeing contracts written up front. Buyer agrees to pay 3%, whatever over appraised value. I'm seeing it go lots of different directions. Obviously sometimes it's not written that way. Sometimes it's just 20 multiple offers and they call out for highest and best. And we have to kind of interview the client and say, how do you feel about paying over appraisal? And we actually have some pretty cool tools in our arsenal where we can input the current purchase price and, when they're going to break even on paying over appraisal based on the way the market is trending up. So some people think, I'm going to pay $5,000 over appraisal. I'm in a bad situation. It's going to be a negative equity situation. And with the market increasing the way it is, they're breaking even within the first 6 months, and now they're starting to appreciate. So it's not a bad thing necessarily, and we can run some analysis behind that.
The other thing lenders can do too is show you what the cost of waiting looks like. If you don't own and you're renting, they can give you a whole analysis and a workup on what the cost of waiting actually looks like. So those are some great things that you can do as a buyer to get your offer accepted. Now, make sure you are financially strong enough to make this offer, and you definitely don't want to do this on your own without the help of a professional, because that is a legal contract. So if you don't have a realtor, you want to have an attorney review that. Make sure you really understand the provisions of that contract. Anything else, Sarah, you want to add to help our little buyers get their offers accepted?
I mean, I can tell you this, when I have a strong buyer that's completely underwritten and approved and it's great and they're looking for their forever home and they're a family, I personally pick up the phone and call the listing agent and say, you just got this offer, you got my pre-approval letter. Well, what can I tell you to help get their offer accepted? These folks have great credit, they're in stable jobs, And I will definitely be a cheerleader for each of our buyers just to try to help that along.
Well, now, I'll tell you behind that, Sarah, it's not even about being a cheerleader. It's about reputation. So just like sometimes I can get an offer accepted based on my reputation with the agent on the other side of the transaction, the lender goes a long way too. We remember what lenders are amazing and which ones are not. So as a listing agent, if I see multiple offers and I have, say, a letter from Bank of God and another one that starts with CH, and then I've got one from the mortgage firm, and Sarah's on the other end of it, or other lenders that I've worked with that I know do a great job and communicate it very well, we are going to choose that lender all day long. We're going to recommend the seller pick a local lender because the
listing agents feel their last no, and they love the fact that we reach out and we're being transparent and happy to communicate with them, and that goes a long way.
And let's face it, the big banks, those closing dates come and go sometimes, and those are contractual agreements, so you don't want to be on the other side of that. All right, Sarah, thanks for your time. This is Tampa Home Talk. We're already out of time, and our off-air number, if you'd like to connect with myself, Sarah, or any of our partners, 813-377-2775. Call or text. We'd love to help. 813-377-2775. Again, call or text 813-377-2775. Stick around. We will be back for another exciting hour with Mike Fasano and Tim Coet with Pasco County Tax Collector. Back in a moment.